everyone. This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander, and I just would like to say this is our 100th episode. We're not going to do any great fanfare on this particular show, but maybe in an upcoming show coming up, we will. This is a very serious topic we're talking about because we're talking about human life and what is the right approach to all human life. I mean, in this world, we have euphemism, which is the actual, I guess, is the standpoint of where a life is at such a burden, either physically or however, and someone is agreed to take that person's life. If I'm incorrect in that, please correct me. But we are talking about the question of reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Who has the right to decide life coming in the world? Being a Christian or being a spiritual person, I value life. It's such a miracle. And then we say it's okay to take a life. I, of course, in my family with my loved ones who are ladies, that's come across in our family. And I'm not going to go into the specifics, but it's had traumatic effects in our family. So, but on the other side, somebody might say, well, if I had brought this particular life in the world, it would have destroyed everything because of the stigma or the responsibility. We were not prepared for it, and it would have caused more problems. That is our question that we're talking about, and very serious subject. And I want to bring in my guest, Sister Tanya Nixon. Please introduce yourself. And then after her, please, Cassandra, introduce yourself. Ms. Tanya Nixon.
Hi, I'm Tanya Nixon. I'm a school counselor, and I am an advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and I advocate on behalf of the LGBTQ community. Thank you for having me here today.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Look forward to your perspective. Sister Cassandra.
I am a registered nurse for over 30 years, as well as a licensed psychotherapist. And I am the owner, administrator, lead therapist for the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center. And I am grateful again to be a guest on the Sourceseeker Hour and looking forward to this serious, impactful conversation on tonight.
Thank you very much as always. And yes, it is a very serious subject. Reproductive rights. Of course, we're talking about the right of abortion. We're talking about bringing new life into the world or deciding not to bring in new life into the world. So I think we're going to get right into it. And I'm going to ask the question, what do you think about abortion? Is it okay? And in what instance is it okay? Sister Tanya.
So I am pro-choice if I had to choose a lane, but I just feel like a woman, this is my body, so it's my choice. And any other woman in the situation has to
Question,
think about,
please, first.
yes.
The way that we are created, the man also has a share in that, even though the child comes through your womb, it's a part of him too. So does not he have a right to have something to say?
Well, that's a whole nother discussion. And if you are, it depends on the relationship that you have, but ultimately the end, and this is my opinion, of course, ultimately the end decision is with the person who's going to carry that child. She has to think about so many things: stability, financially, mental health. We have a lot of parents who are on the same, I guess, academic level as the children. I work in a school, I see it all the time. We talk about instances where it didn't happen through consent. So there are a lot of things to consider. And sometimes it's not about me. There are several mothers that have decided not to bring a child into the world because they know they couldn't raise that child for whatever their background is or finances, and they would want better. So when you think of the option of bringing a child into the world and hoping that someone will adopt the child, think of how many children we have in that system and what happens to them. Again, working in the schools.
Can you share a little bit about how many are in the system as far as waiting on adoptions?
I wish I had done that research. I don't know, but I know that the number is overwhelming. I know that there are so many children that don't get placed. And once they reach a certain age, they no longer have a space. They're just sent out into the world, and we still haven't gotten a smooth transition for that. And so a lot of these children still in their mind, they're not, they're still kids at 18. And now you have to try to figure out how to take care of yourself. So a lot of them end up homeless. And so you create so many issues. And these are the things that I would hope someone considers when they think this is an option.
By the same token, one of those child or several of those child could navigate their way if they're brought into the world, and you never know what they can become if they have the opportunity. So looking at it from both sides. Now, in the Black community, we have always, well, first of all, we didn't have that decision many years ago. But today we have that decision, but it's also slanted by the results of what happened in the past, because we don't have the same opportunities economically, as well as we have a certain amount of trauma that has come from that. But we are still, as a people, navigating out of it. And it's still, I come back to this though. How do we know if you as a woman just concentrate on how you feel and whether you could take care of the child and all of those particular things, isn't that a little selfish?
One could say it's selfish, but if I'm going to have a child I know I'm not going to raise, and I put that child up for adoption, then I'm asking the state now to take care of the child and everyone who pays taxes. And whatever happens to that child throughout the 18 years that someone else will be taking care of it, I don't think it's selfish. But really, my whole, it goes back to just, so Roe v. Wade, it was passed in 73. And a lot of the factors that went into passing that were people are going to do what they want to do if they can find a way. And so you had a lot of people, a lot of women who are injuring themselves or dying because if they decided this is something I cannot do for whatever my reason is, then there's got to be a way. And so if this was going to continue to be an issue, then the law passed, but it was also based on the 14th Amendment where you can't infringe on someone's personal rights. And I just feel like this with so many other issues, it's a mind your own business. If this is my body, it's my choice. It's between me and the father. If the father decides he doesn't want to have anything to do, now I'm looking at being a single parent. What is my education level? How much money do I make? So there are a lot of factors. Mental health. I might be bipolar or schizophrenic, and I know what that might look like trying to raise a child. So I don't think that everyone thinks about all the ramifications that go into that. And some people think really hard and deep over this decision. And I don't think it's something that's taken lightly, but I think that it should be respected if that person who is carrying that child makes that decision. It should be respected.
You said a very important point, and I'm gonna go to Cassandra, but I want to reiterate this. You said a lot of ladies were injuring themselves, even causing themselves death by going through a process, and they were going to do it anyway because of how they felt. And then it was a movement to try to say, okay, if they're going to do it anyway, let's make it legal as well as safer.
Yes.
Okay. Cassandra, what do you feel about the conversation?
I used to be absolutely pro-choice. I used to be absolutely pro-choice, but as I continue to navigate, I'm kind of in a
Can I ask you, because I'm sorry, I just want to cut in, I'll shut up afterwards.
You don't have to shut up.
Does the man and the woman, she gets pregnant, does he have just as much say, a little say, or no say?
I think he has just as much say if he's in the picture. I do believe that.
Okay.
But let me qualify a little bit about why I'm on the fence, because we can both probably give you several examples either way. As a registered nurse, as well as a psychotherapist, and as well as my own experience having 2 abortions before I was married and carried my daughter to term. The first abortion that I had, I was gang raped as a virgin at 17 years old. I ended up pregnant. I ended up with some type of STD because I was gang raped. I have no idea, obviously, who the father was. And I was going to be a senior in high school. I was 17. So having an abortion, though it violated the principles of my family per se, I chose to have an abortion. When I was in college at Howard University, now I'm negligent at that point because I ended up getting pregnant, okay? And I made the decision to have an abortion because I was being it is a selfish decision, whether we want to admit it or not. The decision was I need to get my degree so that I can take care of myself and all of that. And it's a valid decision to make and a valid concern. But I struggled as much raising my child with a RN degree, with only raising her myself, being divorced as a single parent, then probably I went through as much struggle as probably the next person would go through that didn't have the education that I had. Just a lot of things kept hitting my life. So regardless, it was a struggle either way. I know several people that have got pregnant 14, 15 years old. It was a struggle, but they raised phenomenal children. So we don't know the outcome. We can justify either position. That's just the bottom line. I can justify pro-choice. I can justify pro-life. Either way, I've experienced a lot. I've taken several of my friends. I had one friend of mine, one of my best friends, she's a registered nurse. We went to college together. She's had 10 abortions as a RN. Several friends of mine that I've taken, just being reckless. And then using abortion as birth control. there are mitigating circumstances to support either side. I've had situations and those situations where the man wanted the child, the woman didn't, and he asked her, if you bring the child into the world, me and my family will take care of it. And I've seen men raise their child from birth to phenomenal human beings. So I do agree that where you know who the father is, if you're in a relationship or whatever, and he wants his child, then he has every right to want that to happen. The reason why I'm getting more and more on the fence is because I've seen, though I personally, in all honesty, did not experience any emotional trauma related to either abortion, but I've seen the emotional damage that abortion has done to not only patients as a registered nurse, but clients as a psychotherapist, to where the mental fallout from that action has reaped tremendous harvest regarding those seeds that were sown in that act. Because it's just like when I've told patients who were on life support and on ventilators, families, when you make this decision, there's no turning back from this decision. It's no, I changed my mind. This is a permanent decision. About 2 months ago, and I lost a job that I had because I stood with the family fighting not to take their 18-year-old son off of life support. And I told them I represented the insurance company. They had $1 million hospital bill at this point, and the insurance company wanted this boy off. Mind you, he's 18 and he's African-American and on Medicaid. So that had a lot to do with it. And I told the family, whatever decision you make, this is permanent. It's no, I changed my mind. And had the family was split. They wanted him on, one wanted him off. And I lost my job behind that, and I don't regret it. My client rather, within the last 6 weeks, sent me a photo, and it's heartbreaking, really. I'm a registered nurse, but I've been away from that level of nursing for many years. So they evidently have a pill that you can take now that would give an automatic abortion. So she took these pills and it sends you through the laboring process just as if you're literally delivering a child. And when she took the pills, she was cramping really bad because you're literally delivering this child as if you're actually in labor. And when she looked down there in her vaginal area and she saw the head of the baby coming out. Now, these pills are supposed to disintegrate the fetus and you pass clots or tissue or whatever. She was 8 weeks pregnant. The baby was intact. And when she saw the head, she got a lot of toilet paper and she was able to maneuver the baby out. And it is a fully formed baby. She sent me a picture of it. Fully formed baby at 8 weeks. Every feature was distinct. The arms, the legs were crossed. She told me, I don't want to know the sex of the baby. I couldn't tell the sex of the baby even when I looked at it because his legs were crossed and his arms were folded. But it literally put in my face, though I knew that as an RN anyway, that this baby is fully viable at 8 weeks. I had my abortions at 12 and 13 weeks, I think it was. So I literally I murdered 2 children. The Holy Spirit, if I may go here, convicted me as I was dealing with deliverance and strongholds and bondages that were on my life. And we had gone through a deliverance service at church. And the minister stated that if you have participated in abortion, had anything to do with it, took somebody to have one, paid for one, encouraged one in any way, you have aligned yourself with the spirit of death. And she said, you will know that you're aligned with the spirit of death if you're seeing these signs in your life. Everything she stated, I was experiencing. I was under attack, literally from the pit of hell. She stated, if you've had anything to do with abortion and you want deliverance, I invite you to the altar. Literally, it was more people in this, it had to be 2,500 people in that church that night. It was more people at the altar than was in the pews. That's just how prevalent this issue is. The pastor of the church, obviously being male, was dumbfounded. It had to be 2,000 people at that altar easily. People don't know why. And she took us all through a deliverance process. The Holy Spirit gave me a dream, and he showed me in my dream all three of my children. He showed me my daughter who's living. He showed me my other daughter standing next to me and my son. And in my dreams, I'm always in my right mind as if I'm awake. I'm very coherent. Inside of my dreams, I'm always knowing exactly what's happening as if I'm awake. He told me to validate both of my children, to name them, and to bless them. I gave one of my children the name of 7, which means perfection and completion, and the name Free. I named one of my children Free, and I named one of my children 7. When I woke up and I prayed for them, I asked the Holy Spirit to take care of them and bless them. And then I asked the Holy Spirit to whatever the assignment was that they were to complete in this earth, not to allow those assignments to go unrealized. After I went through that process, after the woman of God prayed and released the spirit of death off of it, everything I touched, I didn't care what it was like would die. It would just die. I couldn't bring nothing to fruit. I'm a registered nurse. I was losing job after job after job. All kind of hell, losing tens of thousands of dollars. After I did that, I dedicated, consecrated my children, named them, validated them, gave them the blessing. Strategically, my life started to come back together. This was over 25 years of hell that I was going through after those abortions. Today, not only has God restored my life in phenomenal ways, I literally, over the last 2 weeks, have blessed the body of Christ with over $50,000 in cash. I one church in particular on this past Sunday, I was able to give them over $30,000. Other ministries, several thousands of dollars that God has restored. I own property in 11 countries around the world. God has restored me in ways. I have blessed my friends with over $100,000 worth of gifts within the last 2 months.
So let me ask this.
Mm-hmm.
So from your perspective, reflecting upon that and having it come through your dream gave you a new spirit. And it kind of goes back to the question that I was talking about before we started about the comment by Sister Candace Owens, where she said, basically, I think she's saying hey, we would be a super strong Black community had we kept all of our children.
Mhm.
I want to come back to you on that. Sister Tanya, what do you think about that, the experience of Sister Cassandra expressed, as well as if it was outlawed, would that help our community? I mean, we would have more kids, or would it hinder our community and we fight with each other even more and there's more drama?
First, Cassandra, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I'm so sorry, you know, about the challenges that you face. And I wholeheartedly agree with your position as well, because my position is choice, and every choice has a consequence. I too have actually had 2 abortions. The first one, I was 12, and it was the first time I'd had sex. I can't say I was raped. I can say I really didn't know what I was doing, so I was just ignorant.
Mhm.
And the second time I was in high school, and it was a choice. And I know I was raised in the church. I fully understood the ramifications of my choices. I too did not have a heavy psychological reaction. I had a period where I did mourn, and there were some changes, but I still think that I don't agree with people sitting somewhere randomly deciding what thousands of people are able to do with their body when it's not something that, like right now, one of the controversies is the COVID vaccine. And some people don't agree with vaccines and some do. And so the government is saying, here is evidence that this works. So I understand a group of people coming together using research and making a decision like that. Just as in Roe v. Wade, they looked at the research and overwhelmingly said, while everyone sitting here may not agree with it, however, for those who do feel that that is the best choice for them, let's make it safe so that those individuals can make those choices. And whatever outcome after that, that person has accepted that too. And so again, I go back to choice. And so a life is a life is a life is a life. And a heartbeat, what you described is traumatic. Just to hear about it, this woman having to go through all that by herself, I can't imagine. And I think I'm a pretty tough person. I've been through some stuff. And that will weigh on her for the rest of her life.
Mhm.
However,
Can you be clear as to what you are commenting on? Are you talking about her example of the young lady who had 10 abortions? Okay.
no, the young lady who brought the child, she took the pills and had to see that child, had to pull that child from her body.
Yeah.
That's traumatic.
Yeah.
And so we talk about a heartbeat, and you talked about how many weeks is a viable child. So right now we're all debating, well, 6 weeks, 3 weeks, when does a child become a human being? When does the fetus turn into a child? But many of those who vehemently advocate for pro-life also believe in the death penalty. So when does a life no longer be alive? I know that wasn't grammatically correct, but
Mhm.
so you can't have it both ways. But I just feel like a woman should have the right to decide for herself, because no one outside of who she shares her struggle with knows what's going on.
I like to make these 2 points, and then I'll let you finish. I want to go back to that very important point that there were many women that took the choice upon themselves before it was legal, and they were going to do it one way or another. And the movement said, okay, let's make it legal and let's make it safer. And that was a part of the movement. As well as, well, I go back to this question. In the Black community, we've had a lot of things happen to us.
Mhm.
And going back to Candace Owens' comment, she's trying to say that there would be so much strength if we had had all of those children coming into the world. However, you know, it just doesn't work as simply as that, because everybody has things going on, and it doesn't work like that. And it's an individual decision with the individual family and the individual circle of people.
Mhm.
And it has to be like that, because nobody can really decide who somebody else is and what they are about. And, you know, anytime we do that, and just like you said, there are some people who are 14 and raise their child and they come out to be a great human being. I think Obama's mother was kind of young when he was born. I think. I have to go back and do my research, but you never know. But it is an individual decision to help the family. But I've heard of this situation also. The woman got mad at the man. They were having issues. He wanted the child, but because she's mad at him, she has the abortion to hurt him. Those type of things happen also. And I think one of the ideals behind the law is at least, you know, make it public, make it where, you know, she has to bring it to a court of law or so forth. I want to go back to you, Ms. Nixon. Do you have a comment on that? Then I'll go back to Cassandra.
Sure. I think there are horrible stories on both sides, and there are amazing stories on both sides. My mother, and I use this term, my mother was a crackhead, and I pulled her out of crack houses. I raised myself. I loved going to school because I knew I was going to get 2 meals a day, and I wasn't sure what was going to be there when I got home. Christmas, my mom was gone for 2 weeks. My grandmother dropped groceries off. So there are wonderful stories on both sides. There are horrible stories on both sides. I still think that people have a right to choose what happens to their, in any other situation, if it's heart failure, if we overeat and have a certain, all those things we get to decide upon because it's our body, unless you're in an emergency situation. You also had, so times are different, but farther back in our history, you had a lot of incidents of incest. And so also, when you give up a child, like you bring the child into the world, if you also have those parents that resent that child for every sacrifice they've had to make. And so they bring a child into the world and they destroy them every day. And so there's so many outcomes. There's so many outcomes that I just think that a white guy sitting somewhere in a robe should not get to tell me what, me meaning women, any woman, should not be able to decide you should carry that child. You take care of that child. That's a lot, in my opinion. And my thing is, I always say, so for every person who totally believes in pro-life, then you should have to go to and adopt a child. You want that child in the world for whatever reason. And it's a beautiful thing. I don't want to sound callous, but I'm saying it's one thing to make a decision and it doesn't affect you. And I just think that if it doesn't affect you, if there's no harm being done and consent is involved, it should only be the decision of the people who are affected and no one else, unless they're, you know, a doctor weighs in and says, this is your best choice. But people arbitrarily make a decision about someone else, I just don't think that makes sense. So, but Candace Owens, her comment that if we in the Black community did not have abortion, the numbers would be larger. Yes, but it doesn't mean we would stick together better. It doesn't mean we will support each other better, because as you said, a lot of things have been done to those of us in marginalized communities, Black people, we'll start with. And so a lot of that history comes with it. And so we've been taught as a people from slavery not to stick together and so many things. And then you were forced to live in poverty. And so people had to do what they had to do in order to put food on the table. And so many destructive things have occurred in our community. And so just to have more Black people, I think is irrelevant. But if it's illegal, not only would there be more Black people, there'd be more white people, more Asian. So I really don't understand her comment. Also, knowing her politics, she generally doesn't advocate for us anyway. So like, I feel like that's a backhand play, you know? So I don't know.
I understand. Yes, there's a lot of perspectives. I agree with you. A white guy with a very limited perspective should not just be the sole defining force of that conversation. The movement in Texas now, I don't think is going to stand very long. I think Roe v. Wade will stand. It will continue to stand. I believe that is the case. I think it's the most logical thing overall, in my opinion. Cassandra, what do you say about the comment? What's your comment on the Black community if we had to have outlawed of abortion? We couldn't have reproductive rights. What would be going on?
I agree with Ms. Tanya in that I was kind of confused with Candace Owens as well, because she's so, in my opinion, anti-Black until I didn't get that. But my opinion of it is more numbers doesn't necessarily mean more quality in our community. It just means more numbers on both sides, more numbers of well-educated, intelligent Blacks, and more numbers of those less educated and less desirable, so to speak. I don't think the numbers make much difference in what we would get as a community. You know, we have to work on whatever numbers we have to try to be the best that we can for one another. This is a debate that you will never exhaust the positives and the negatives. Right. I've seen
I agree with that.
Cases as if one of my clients in particular right now insisted that her daughter have the baby when she got pregnant. And she got pregnant at 24, 25. And she insisted that this young lady have the baby. Well, it's just like Ms. Tanya was saying earlier, her daughter is diagnosed as bipolar. And so about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the little boy is 3 years old now. And it was a major situation happened. And, you know, and I had been working with her mother around this issue anyway, because she was like, no, it's time for you to raise up and be a mother. You are a mother, and this is what you need to do. And I had to push back with my client, because I'm like, she told you when she got pregnant that she's not a mother. She doesn't want to have this child. And you insisted that she have the child. Now you're trying to tell her what she needs to do to be a mother. I get where you're coming from, but how is that fair? well, is not my child. You need to raise up, but you made her have the baby, so to speak. Okay. And right now, today, and I do, because I'm more of a registered nurse than a therapist, because I have 30 plus years as a nurse. So my approach is generally not going to be, is very egregious to your typical therapist. That's why I can't work for anybody else, because my whole strategy is different. And so I don't let my clients sit in foolishness and sit in deception or faulty thinking. When you told her that she had to have this baby, what you were telling her is, if you can't raise this child, then I will need to raise this child, period. If somebody's telling you that's not who I am, I don't want it, you have to take what they're saying, which is what Ms. Tanya is talking about. So subsequently, to keep the child from going to CPS, my client is having to raise her, at least raise the little boy, at least for right now, while they work through all of the legal stuff and the police case and everything that's surrounding the situation. I agree that when you have people, when every time they look at the child, they see the baby's daddy and they hate the child because it looked just like the daddy, and they're transferring that hate onto the child. I've had many cases like that with clients. They're beat because they look like the daddy, you know, or they represent the pain and the hurt that the daddy gave, or they're a victim of rape. I've had many clients, patients as a nurse, who chose, because of their religious beliefs or whatever, to have the baby as the child of being raped. Now you got resentment as a result of that violation. So in some instances, I do believe that the right to do what you need to do, you know, which may actually, abortion may actually protect certain children. The story of the people that had been held against, the young ladies that had been held against their will for what, 10, 11 years, they had found that guy. And if you watch the movie or the documentary of it, and I forgot the name of it, one of those girls, they said nobody ever knew that that young lady was missing for all those years because she had nobody that cared about her. You have a whole human being missing for over 10 years that nobody was looking for. Nobody was, and she had a child for that man that had been holding them hostage.
And then that's continued trauma for her.
Is that, you know, and so you have so many scenarios on both sides. So it really, at the end of the day, it goes, I don't think this, I think the law needs to mandate how things are done in certain situations, but to draw a hard, no, you can't have one, you know, is a little bit extreme because, see, I could not have brought a child into this world as a result of that gang rape, because that just would have been probably more than I could handle because of the circumstances. Now, the second child, that was just being selfish. I mean, I'm in school, I'm trying to get a degree, I'm trying to do whatever. That's just selfishness. My family was very wealthy. My sister got pregnant at 18 and had her child. We all raised my nephew. He probably thought I was more his mother than my sister was. So, you know, it's not an issue really of economics, because we as a community, we know how to make it through struggle. I mean, you can plan to have your child and go through more economic hell than you even want to think about. I was married 3 years before I had my daughter, and I went through absolute financial hell trying to raise her and being a registered nurse. And so I don't think is that I just think beyond the economic, because our community anyway is used to coming through hard times and struggles, and there are too many resources. You get more resources as a single parent trying to raise a child than you would working like I was trying to raise one. You gonna get all kind of help from WIC and whatever that child care, NIC or what, NIC or whatever all it.
There are a lot of programs now, yeah.
Yeah, they have better health care. I was a nurse for years with no health insurance at all because I was working contract. Their Medicaid program was way better, and I'm a nurse. They got vision, dental, all kind of stuff going on. So it's not as so much of an economic thing as it is just, you don't want to be bothered with it, or you just, that's the bottom line in all honesty, whatever the dynamic is, unless it's some extenuate where you have people with mental illness, people that are strung out on drugs, they got 8 and 9 kids, and they're still getting pregnant. That's a different situation.
Yes, ma'am.
As a woman of God, in my conscious mind, I am pro-choice. As a woman of God, I'm starting to lean more toward pro-life as after seeing that fetus. Even when my friend that had 2 or 3 abortions, she couldn't even look at that fetus when I sent her the picture of it. It just put her, she did go through a lot of emotional stuff as a result of her abortion. And when she saw that fetus, it just took her to another place, because you can't help but associate that with your own child that you murdered. Really, that's what you did, however you want to dress it up. And so I think a lot of us made decisions just out of what was convenient. We didn't have any psychological understanding of what it meant. And that's why you have so many people suffering. And then you have people, especially if they desire a child and they can't get pregnant, then they start dealing with a lot of guilt as it relates to the abortions. Well, maybe if I wouldn't have had the abort, maybe God is punishing me, all of that. So it's a lot of ramifications that we don't understand, especially when you 12 getting pregnant. You don't know anything about, long-term issues and things. And I'm gonna tell you this, a lot of times you don't think something is impacting your life, and it is. That abortion at 12 has impacted your life, whether you understand it did or can connect the dots to it or not. It's just the Bible is just still true, whether we want to agree with it or not, or whether we admit it or not. There are serious consequences when we violate the principles of God. That's just the bottom line, whether we can justify it or whether we can't. I can justify it because I was raped, but it still doesn't mean that there are consequences that I would not have to undergo because of me being a child of God, And so the second one obviously was a conscious choice and decision, but nevertheless, so we do need to have these conversations. We do need to look at it from different sides, not just one side or the other, one side trying to make the other side agree with them. They're very valid points on both sides. At the end of the day, it comes down to how you reconcile it in your own mind, understanding whichever choice you make to bring the child into the world or not. There are going to be some long-term consequences.
Yes, I agree.
Very deep. We are toward the end of our show. It's been a very informative show. I've heard so many different points that I have to think about. I'm gonna go back and think about them, research them, try to understand it for my own family also. I want to say this last point. I think our consensus is that we believe that choice, we agree with it, but we would like to have the best result of the child being born and becoming something. But we understand there are circumstances where choice is preferred.
Mhm.
I know we're wrapping up, but can I throw two other quick points out?
Okay, yes, ma'am. And
So-
then after you finish, give us your who you are as we end up. Make your a long comment though.
So we also have to think about two things. This always comes up. It's political. It's something for both of the parties to struggle, and really it detracts from really important things that we could be working on. The other thing is, think about historically. So there was slavery. When slavery ended, there were the Jim Crow laws. Then there was redlining. So there's always been a systemic something systemically put in place to keep us where the powers that be want us. And so I think this is also another one of those things, because the same people that advocate for a problem, for programs like this, also can afford to take their wife to a private doctor and have that abortion, or their daughter, or whatever. But the politics and the power, this is one way to control people. And in this instance, it's not just Black people, it's lower class. And, you know, those with the money want to make sure they keep the money and the power. So I think this also is another way.
Generational.
Generational, yes.
Yes, they want to make sure they keep generational power, and keeping the population of the so-called lower class helps them to do that.
Yeah.
So I do understand that. Any more about this particular subject that you want to share before we start closing up?
So, I mean, I agree with Cassandra. There's guilt, there's repercussions on both sides. Even when you have the baby, but you give it up, for the rest of your life, you're going to wonder what happened to that child. And that child is going to wonder, why did my mother give me away? So there's guilt, there's hurt on every side of it. And every person deals with that hurt in different ways. Because of my childhood, it's not a great thing, but I'll say I've been blessed with the ability to compartmentalize. But whenever it decides to open up, it's not a great feeling when that happens, but I can put things in boxes, and that's how I move through the day. And it's not healthy. I do understand that. But I just think, like it was said earlier, this is something that we will debate, I think, to the end of the time, because when the law was passed, it's based on the 14th Amendment, which says you cannot infringe on someone else's rights. And then HIPAA says that what's going on in my health history, my records, that's for me to know and no one else. So I think there are so many protections in place that at the end of every day, we're going to come back to Roe v. Wade will,
I think so too.
Yeah.
Would you like to share any type of contact or anything, or social media or anything?
So I, again, Tanya Nixon, I advocate on behalf of those who feel they don't have a voice. I have a company, Thoughtful Solutions, but I have not done the work to make sure that you can reach out to me. I promise the next time I'm here, I'll have that for you.
Yes, ma'am. Peace and power. Thank you. Very informative. We appreciate it very much. Sister Cassandra, your comment and close us out.
Sure. I'm Cassandra Barnes, RN, licensed psychotherapist. My Facebook page is the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center, named after my grandmother, who was a tremendous, tremendous role model for me. And so my thing is just be informed, pray about it, get some guidance, understand what you're doing, seek counseling if need be before making a decision, so that you really understand the ramifications of whatever decision that you're making. And that it sits with you in a way that you can live for the rest of your life, because the emotional trauma of giving up a child, that second guessing. Once you bring a child into the world, you think you could give it up. Now you can't. You know, it's just hurt on all kinds of situations. The child is hurt because they don't know why you didn't raise them. Or maybe you did raise them, but you were abusive because you were angry or you regretted it or whatever the case may be. There's very significant ramifications on both sides of the equation when the mother is not in agreement with being pregnant. You know, she's not in agreement with being pregnant, and she has some very significant decisions to make. And so at the end of the day, we just want everybody to be healthy. And if that is a decision that you have made that you now regret, on either side, seek counseling. Allow the Holy Spirit to heal your heart and to cleanse your heart so that you can live as peaceably as you can. Give yourself permission to be healed. Don't carry excessive guilt that because you feel that you should because of whatever decisions that you make. You know, healing can be your portion. I happen to be a Christian, but I respect whatever your religious belief or, you know, presentation is. I respect that. So I'm not pushing a Christian worldview on you, but whatever healing looks like for you, I pray that you find that place of healing. Give yourself permission to let the guilt go so you can live as peaceably as you can, you know, and that's kind of how I will end with that, and just wishing everyone.
And if they want to reach out to you, tell them how to reach out.
My Facebook page is the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center. And so I welcome any comments regarding any aspect of what we've discussed today. And so this again is always my pleasure to participate in these discussions because they are enlightened and informative and intelligent. And so I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This has been our 100th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. Very appropriate, very timely and important subject, and a thought for a lot of young people and a lot of people, period, as to a decision, a very lasting decision. And we thank everybody for joining us. We hope that you join us every episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. We are now every other week. And our next show is self-care and self-actualization for the holidays. That's going to be a very important show also. And as always, we're trying to bring you good information, timely subjects, things that you can take home, understand, and think about and talk about and come to some understandings of new things, exciting things, or interesting things. I'm Baruti Carl Alexander. This is Sourceseeker Hour, our 100th episode. We're very glad that you joined us. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Everybody have a